As part of the Clear-Sighted Career Online Learning Series, we welcome you to today's webinar titled Effective and Distinctive Resumes, a Refresher. My name is Annie Duffy, class of 2006, and certified resume writer, and I serve as a career advisor for Notre Dame's Alumni Association. A little bit about myself. I have been in my role with the Alumni Association for nearly 2 years now and worked as the Director of Worldwide Clubs within the NDAA for 3 years prior to taking on this current role. Before returning to work for Notre Dame, I held various corporate marketing positions with American Express and News Corporation. As we get started today, I encourage you to submit your questions at any time using the prompts in the Q&A section that appear on your screen. If we are unable to address your question due to time constraints, we will respond to you offline after the webinar concludes. To facilitate this, please just include your email address in your question. And as a reminder, this webinar is being recorded and will be posted to alumni.nd.edu/career in the Multimedia Resources section. Today we'll begin by talking about what many people don't know about resume writing. We'll follow with a quick discussion on the various components of a resume, including what's important to include as well as exclude. And then we'll follow with details about the 3 primary resume formats, including which one might be best for you personally. We'll then spend some time on the importance of a resume visual format and take a look at 2 samples of a resume side by side for comparison. And then we'll finish with some important resume writing tips, including do's and don'ts surrounding resume details such as length, font, grammar, and content. We'll begin today's discussion talking about what many people don't know about resume writing. First and most importantly, your resume should be an employer-focused document rather than job seeker-focused. Your resume should clearly answer the employer's question, why should I hire you, and how do you solve my problem, which is to fill this open position as quickly and successfully as possible. When drafting your resume, it's really important to place yourself in the employer's shoes and consider what they want and how you can help them. Less is more. Unfortunately, the average hiring manager only spends 20 to 30 seconds max scanning a resume, and they've actually usually made their decision within the first 8 seconds of scanning. Additionally, they're usually reviewing a stack of resumes at a time. So this being said, your resume needs to grab their attention immediately in order to keep it. A resume that's jam-packed with words and with little white space on the page will discourage them from the start, and you'll likely lose their interest before they even begin reading. In relation to the less is more concept, the best way to grab a reader's attention is to tailor your resume directly to each position description. This will, 1, position you as the perfect fit for the job, and 2, it will also help you trim down your resume so that only relevant information is included. Now, trust me, I know how hard it is to take information off of your resume. You have worked very hard, and these experiences are very, very close to you. But again, place yourself back in the reader's shoes. They have specific requirements, which they've listed right there for you in the position description. They also have potentially hundreds of resumes to read. Keep it simple and show them just what they're asking for. Feel free to take keywords and skill sets directly from the position description and incorporate into your resume, tying back to your experiences, and then remove anything irrelevant, because those additional bullets are really only going to bury the information that they need to see. Think of it this way. If you have 8 bullets listed and then 3 of them tie back exactly to what the hiring manager asks for, but those 3 are listed at the end of this section, all of those other bullets are really overshadowing them, and there's a good chance the reader won't even see them. You'll position yourself as a much stronger candidate if you include just those 3 so that they're the focus. Another recommendation that many people tend to forget is that resumes should include accomplishments, not just your tasks. Think of it from this perspective. You're likely applying for a job where many of the candidates have similar experience or even more experience than you, and therefore have fairly similar resumes to yours. What's going to set you apart from these candidates is if you can express to the reader what you've done with these experiences. So highlight your accomplishments as best you can and quantify as much as possible. Don't sell yourself short. A resume is one of the few places where it's completely acceptable to brag about yourself. So think of times where you maybe have generated revenue for the company, you've saved the company money, you outperform competitors, times maybe when you were the first to do something or you ranked among top performers, or really just made your colleagues or clients' lives easier. Anything impressive. A great place to find this information is in past annual reviews, project reviews, or report summaries. And remember, you were asked to do each of these tasks for a reason. If you achieved that reason, that's the accomplishment. It may not seem impressive to you, but it will to the reader. So really, just try to explain why you did something and the accomplishment will appear. Another aspect of resumes that many people tend to downplay is formatting. Formatting is extremely important. How you formatted your resume will be the absolute first thing that the reader notices even before they read the first word on the page. This being said, please don't disregard it. Make sure your format is easy on the eyes and you have a healthy balance of white space and words. We'll go into this more a little bit later on in the presentation. And finally, it's important to remember that a resume does not land you the job, nor does it replace networking. A resume is simply here to help you secure that interview. So continue networking with our awesome Notre Dame alumni base out there and have your resume ready for that next step, and then be prepared to bring your A game to the interview. Next, we're going to talk about the components of a resume. So every resume should have at least 3 components, usually 4 and possibly even 5 depending on your history and the industry. The first component will always be your heading, which should just include your name, physical address, and 1 phone number and 1 email address. Avoid including more than 1 phone or email, as this causes an unnecessary extra step in the thought process for the decision maker. Also try to make sure that your name is much larger than the rest of your heading. Remember, the HR manager will likely have a stack of resumes in front of them, and you'll want your name to be easily visible when they're sifting through. Really make it stand out so that they don't have to dig deep to find it. The next component of a resume is the summary of qualifications section. This section is one of the absolute most important pieces of your resume. It's the first chunk of career-related information the reader will see, and it will be the deciding factor on whether or not they'll continue reading. This section is especially important for individuals who are transitioning into a new industry. It establishes the reader's focus, and it's your opportunity to let them know again that you're the perfect fit for the position. When drafting your summary statement, take a good look at the position description, find those keywords, and highlight how your skills directly transfer to those needs. You have some flexibility in how you format the summary, as well as how you title it. It can be anywhere from about 3 to 5 lines or 3 to 5 bullets long. And you can also be creative with the title, using anything from summary of qualifications, executive summary, professional snapshot, or you can even include the industry name in the title. Say, for example, digital media qualifications or public relations summary. This might be an especially great idea for someone who doesn't have direct experience in the field, but does have transferable skills and qualifications to highlight. I strongly recommend using a summary of qualifications section versus an objective statement because 1, they're much more indicative of your skills, and 2, objective statements are me-focused versus employer-focused. Objective statements also really don't tell the reader anything that they don't already know. Obviously, your objective is to work at this company or secure this position or if you're applying to the job. So utilize this prime real estate to let them know why they should choose you. The following component will be your experience section. Remembering here that less is more, focus on including only that relevant information. What you decide to include will be just as important as what you decide to exclude. Always start your sentences off with strong action verbs. Good examples could include things like implemented, executed, led, initiated. There are hundreds out there, so use as many as you can and try not to repeat. And finally, once again, so many people forget to include those accomplishments. Include them and quantify as much as possible. I like to remind people that numbers are a universal language. They're easy to understand, and they're very easy to spot on the page. So include them throughout your resume, and especially in that experience section. And the final section of your resume should be any or all of the following, again, depending on your industry, the job description, and your level of experience. Most of the time, many of these can be merged into one section to save space, and the information can be condensed depending on your level. For example, if you've been out of school for more than 1 year, you can leave off GPA and relevant coursework under education. I oftentimes also see education at the top of the resume. However, if you've been out of school for more than 1 year, that information should be down at the bottom. At that point, employers are much more interested in the details of your relevant work experience. There's no doubt that they'll be scanning for your education information, but since it's a short piece, it's very easy to find. So utilize, again, that prime real estate at the top for what they need to see as soon as possible. All right, and next we'll spend just a few minutes discussing the 3 most common types of resumes. The first type, and the most common and traditional type, is the chronological format, which lists job history in reverse chronological order. This resume is great for anyone who has a solid, uninterrupted work history and is pursuing a job in the same industry that they have experience in. The advantages to this format are that it highlights career progression, it's easy for the HR manager to read. However, it does highlight gaps in employment and your relevant experience if you're transitioning into a new field. And let's be very honest, many people don't have a completely uninterrupted, solid work history in just one industry. For these individuals, a functional resume should be considered. Now, do not be intimidated by this format. If done correctly, this is a great format that I highly encourage people to use. It's actually my favorite one. It differs from the chronological format in that it's organized by skills versus most recent experience. It's wonderful because it illustrates your transferable skills first, allowing the reader to see how great of a fit you are right away. You also have more flexibility in organizing your information since it de-emphasizes positions, dates, and gaps in work history. Once you've listed each of the transferable skills up top, work history is followed so that you still give credit to your professional experience just with much less detail. And then the final format we'll discuss today is the combination format, which is great for individuals with diverse employment history or gaps in job history, but who have had really strong titles or strong employers that they'd like to highlight. This format starts with a functional aspect and then finishes with the chronological details of jobs. This resume is great for highlighting those relevant skills and accomplishments and still emphasizing your experience, but it does tend to be quite a bit longer, which is not ideal for HR managers. Moving on to visual formatting. I can't express enough how important your visual format is and how often individuals neglect to prioritize this. Remember, even before a single word is read on your resume, the hiring manager will notice your visual format. You want to invite the reader in, easily guiding their eyes from one section to another and making it easy on the eyes to read. So, I like to remind individuals to keep in mind the 5 C's when formatting their resume, which include the following: Consistency. Always be consistent in your spacing, alignment, font types and sizes, section titles, really absolutely everywhere. Inconsistencies are a pet peeve of almost every hiring manager, and it leads them to believe that you lack attention to detail, which is absolutely not what we want them to think. Make sure that your page is also clear and clean, especially when related to spacing, indentation, alignment, font, and the use of bold, underlined, and italicized words. Also get creative. So many people think that there are set rules to resume writing, but the only set rule is that your document should be error-free. Other than that, feel free to get a little bit creative with your format so that your resume stands out from others. Just remember the first 3 C's and be sure to remain consistent, clear, and clean. And then finally, make sure that you are comfortable with your final product. You can ask 100 people for advice and recommendations, but ultimately, it's your document, and you need to feel comfortable and confident with what you submit. The next aspect of visual formatting is creating page balance. One of the most important aspects of page balance is the amount of white space on the page versus words. If your resume is jam-packed with words and bullets, the reader will not have a comfortable, inviting first impression. On the other hand, if the page is primarily white space with very few sentences, the reader may not take it very seriously. So make sure you have a healthy balance of white space and words. Margins. While margins can occasionally shrink below 1 inch to accommodate balance across lines, I would really encourage you to try your best to stay above 0.75 inches for your right, left, and top margin, and no smaller than 0.5 inches for your bottom. Once you've completed your resume, try taking the wall test, where you tape your resume to the wall and then step back about 5 to 8 feet so that you can no longer read the words, and then check for page balance and an overall clean, organized visual format. And always feel free to borrow examples of formats out there and even work off of sample Word documents. So many can be found through simple Google searches, as well as on susanwhitcomb.com/resources, which is actually part of a website created by the author of my favorite resume book called Resume Magic by Susan Whitcomb. And also don't forget that there are a handful of great resources located within the NDAA's Career Services website. Now, before moving on to our next topic, I wanted to perform a virtual wall test with you all. On the next slide, I have 2 versions of a resume, and I'd like you to think to yourself which one is more visually inviting in the eyes of the HR manager. Okay, so I'm hoping that you all agree that version 2 has a much more appealing visual format. In version 2, a much heavier focus was placed on page balance and increasing white space by excluding less relevant experience. In this version, eyes are easily guided from one section to another through those clear section breaks, and additional spacing was also added in between each bullet. And finally, I wanted to share with you some important tips and reminders to always keep top of mind when writing your resume. First, while there's no set rule to resume length, most HR managers strongly prefer resumes be kept to 1 page. If a resume does exceed 1 page, it shouldn't occur until an individual has at least 7 to 10 years of work experience after graduation. Always condense as much as possible. And if you do spill over onto a second page, but only 1/3 or so of the page is utilized, play with your formatting and your content to either 1, shorten it back to 1 page, or 2, utilize more of the second page to balance out that abundance of white space. Your resume should never exceed 2 pages, no matter how lengthy your job history is. And actually, keep in mind that there still are some HR managers out there who will require one page from everyone, no matter how long you've been working. So always try to have a one-page version ready as well. Try to use only one font type in your resume, not including your name. Serif fonts offer the best readability, and those include font types that have a small baseline at the bottom of the letter. Examples of serif fonts include Times New Roman, Garamond, and Footlight, but there are many, many others out there as well. We also strongly suggest that you use no more than 2 to 3 font sizes in your resume, again, excluding your name. Limiting to fewer sizes creates a cleaner and more organized look. Another extremely important reminder is to pay attention to details, especially those little ones. Make sure your margins are within the acceptable size limit, your punctuation, format, and grammar are consistent, and remember to go easy on the usage of bolding, underlining, and italicizing. Try to avoid using more than one of these at a time so that the reader doesn't have a hard time uncovering your informational hierarchy. We never want to exceed 5 bullets per section or 5 lines per paragraph. If this occurs, try breaking up into 2 sections, whether it be one section in short paragraph form, focusing on your task, and then another section of bullets, maybe highlighting your accomplishments, or you can create separate sections focusing on related skill sets or experiences. And always try to avoid sub-bullets. Remember, we want to provide the greatest readability for the HR manager so that they can get through this as quickly as possible and have it be very understandable. And sub-bullets create an extra layer for them to understand and absorb. You should always place a heavier focus on hard skills versus soft skills, since hard skills offer more validity and description than soft. Hard skill examples include things like years of experience, specific areas of expertise, occupational skills, and job titles. Where soft skill examples would be things like strong interpersonal skills, attention to detail, and communication skills. That's not to say that soft skills should never be noted, though. They do carry weight and can be used occasionally, but only if the position description clearly states it as a required or preferred skill, and include those related accomplishments for proof so that it carries a greater deal of weight. This is especially important because it's likely that everyone else will be listing those same soft skills as well, and it will mean much more to the reader and go a lot further if they have that proof along with it. Feel free to send your resume to others for further review, feedback, and ideas. And finally, never use personal pronouns in a resume and limit the amount of articles used. Since a resume is really more of a listing of your experience and accomplishments, full sentences aren't necessary. Furthermore, remember it's an employer-focused document, which is another reason not to use the words I and me. And to summarize our presentation today, remember, your resume should always be an employer-focused document. Place yourself in an HR manager's shoes when you're writing your resume and think about only what they want to see. Tailor your resume directly to the position that you're applying for. Position yourself as the perfect fit for the job. I know this will take a little bit more time and effort than having one general resume, but I guarantee you that your resume will stand out much more than others, and the overall process will end up being a lot shorter. And remember, less is more. Include only the information that's relevant, because anything else is only going to bury the information that the reader needs and wants to see. A resume is not meant to be a biography of your career. Condense to what's most important to make your resume stand out from others. Create a strong summary of qualifications that includes hard skills and accomplishments. Remember, it's the first section the HR manager reads, and it should encourage them to continue reading. Continue to include quantifiable accomplishments throughout the resume. Remember, numbers are a universal language. Choose the most appropriate resume for your situation, and don't be afraid of the functional format. And finally, remember that there are no set rules to resume writing except that the document should be error-free and consistent. So feel free to get a little bit creative and try something new. All right, and now we're ready to open it up for Q&A. Please feel free to send your questions to the Q&A feature of Adobe Connect. And again, if we aren't able to get to your question, we'll answer it via email after the webinar. Just please make sure to include your email when you submit the question. Okay, so let's see here. We had this question come up, it looks like a couple times, so I will address this one first. What is the difference between a resume and a CV, and when are each used? So this is a really good question that I hear quite a bit. CVs are actually used primarily in the scientific, academic, and medical communities, whereas resumes are used in all other instances. CVs are complete lists rather than short sentences or paragraphs of material, and they're really credential-driven rather than accomplishment-oriented. They usually include a complete list of education and dissertation information, and then they usually follow with a list of teaching and research experience, as well as anything from publications, presentations, awards, honors, affiliations, and appointments. So a lot of information that is not needed or required in a resume. And because CVs are straight comprehensive lists of credentials, they're much longer in length than a resume. Another question we have, how do I go about shortening my resume without cutting out important and relevant information? This is a really good question. If you have absolutely cut everything out that you can, and every single piece of your resume is relevant to the position description, you can still shorten your resume a few different ways. The first would be to remember to be short and sweet with your sentences, using note form as I had mentioned earlier. You want it to be as quick as possible for the reader to get through so that they can get to the next bullet. You can also always play around with your formatting just a little bit and merge related bullets or sections to avoid repeating ideas or concepts. Another really great tip is to try to avoid having just 1 to 2 words on the final line of a bullet. Exclude any words prior that aren't completely necessary for that sentence to make sense. By doing this, not only will you save yourself an entire line, and you'll end up doing that throughout the resume, but you'll also have a nicer balance across the page as well for each of your lines. And it also makes the bullets a little bit less wordy and therefore, again, easier for the reader to get through, which is ideal. And so that's an added bonus right there as well. And I think most importantly, though, place yourself, again, in the HR manager's shoes. Take a good look at that position description. If the position description probably isn't going to be more than 1 to 2 pages, so your resume certainly shouldn't be either. So exclude anything that they aren't directly asking for. And it looks like we have time for one more question. Again, all others I will respond as soon as possible via email. But this one asks, what if I attended 2 schools before graduating due to transferring? Do I list both and what I was studying, or just the one that I graduated from? You should only list the one that you have the degree from. The only time this would be an exception would possibly be if you had very, very relevant coursework from the prior school that's applicable and noted in the position description. But really, to stay safe, you probably only would need to list that final one that you received a degree from. Okay, So thank you everyone so much for joining today. Again, the recorded presentation will be available shortly on alumni.nd.edu. And please remember that the NDAA Professional Programs team offers complimentary resume reviews if you email us a Word document of your resume. And we hope to see you at the next installment of the Clear-Sighted Career Online Learning Series, which will take place Thursday, June 25th at noon. And it will be titled Personal Branding, Your Resume and LinkedIn Profile. Thanks and have a great day.